If my eyebrows look weird, please don't bring it to my attention. I'm already aware. I'm trying soap brows. I don't know how I like it, but I'm so inspired by Hannah Louise posting. Plus, when I was still working at the spa, I will never forget this woman busted out of her service and like came to check out. And I was like, oh, how was everything, blah, blah. And she looked at me, she's like, I love your eyebrows, but you should start fluffing up the front. Trust me, I'm a makeup artist. You would look so good with fluffed up eyebrows. She said it very sweetly. Ever since that day, I've just been on the quest for fluffy brows, and I've finally just given up and tried soap. And like, so far so good, but I also low-key feel like Teen Wolf. So we're just gonna try it out for a couple videos and see how it goes. My name is Lacey of Spiegels and Fat Hips, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I haven't done a sit-down dedicated review to one release in a very long time because I have anxiety my brain out of it. Like, for whatever reason, every time I'm like, okay, I'm gonna review this thing, I feel like I take too much time testing it out because I never want to half-ass a review. Don't know what this hand gesture is. So by the time I'm like, okay, I'm ready, I just convince myself that no one's gonna give a shit anymore. So I've talked myself out of reviews, and then I always get like anxious, and I'm like, oh, it's been so long since I reviewed anything, nobody cares. I care. I was gonna say I don't care. I do care. I want to review these palettes, and I know they're coming out in like a couple days. I want to review the new Melt collection. These two palettes, as well as a highlighter and some eyeliners, lipsticks. I only have the palettes and the highlighter. This is Melt's Amor Eterno collection. I know I just said that extremely white. I never took Spanish in high school. I took 4 years of German, so I cannot pronounce these words very well. I'm gonna do my best and just know I mean the utmost respect as I try. This is their holiday collection, and I feel like rightfully so, the beauty community has freaked out about this collection because it is so beautiful and it is so incredibly thoughtful. This collection was inspired by Mexican culture. Specifically, one of the owners of Melt, I believe, grew up as a Mexican American and is celebrating her heritage in this collection. And I think for me, that's why it feels so special, not only because these are interesting, beautiful colors, but because there's a lot of heart behind this collection, and I just feel like we're all feeling that, and I've seen a lot of people resonating very much so with this collection, so I'm so excited. This came out as like an early pre-release a week or two ago, and it's officially launching on Black Friday. We have two palettes that I'm going to be reviewing today, as well as the highlighter. I'm wearing a little bit of both of these palettes today. I have worn them a lot in the last 2 weeks. I'm going to start off with the Vida palette, which is the more like warm tone, almost neutral palette, but I actually don't feel this is a neutral palette at all. In my 2 cents, this is very much a vivid kind of neon palette. First of all, the packaging. I love the 2 halves of the sugar skulls. I love all of the floral details. The color story is very much present. It feels nice and sturdy. It is cardboard. It does have mirror, and the mirror is decorated, and then you have the shadows with all of the names. It is the same size as the Melt Gemini palette, or the 27 palette. I believe that's the red one. It is just a little bit bigger than the Radioactive palette or the Smoke Session palette. Both of these palettes are $58. That's a little pricey. The palettes are made in America, and they are cruelty-free but not vegan. There is carmine in both palettes. You get 8 mattes and 2 metallics, and I will swatch these really quick. I did build up the swatches just a little bit because I'm swatching more so to show color story than to show performance, because I'm going to talk about the performance in a second. Like I said, I think people were kind of labeling this palette as the more neutral palette, and I would not agree with that at all. It is extremely vivid. Even the yellows are very interesting to me and kind of skew a little green, and these cooler tone kind of neutral shades, the browns, skew green as well. So actually this top half is pretty grungy, and I love these color combinations, specifically for both palettes. They're not colors that I would typically pair together, but now that I've seen them together, like the blues and the teals with the reds and the yellows and the greens with the reds, I'm kind of like, oh, that's the only way it ever could have been. Like, to me, these are such interesting color stories, and they're so different compared to a lot of things in my collection, but I do have comparisons coming soon. The Muerte palette, same deal. You have the beautiful half of the skull. You have the super interesting blues and teals with reds. Instead of 8 mattes though, you have 7 mattes and 3 shimmers. Personally, this one is my favorite because it feels extremely unique to my collection, whereas I feel like I have other kind of bright harvesty kind of tones. I don't know how else to phrase it. So I'm going to swatch this one real quick and then we're going to talk about formula. Okay, this is the Muerte palette, kind of all poorly swatched out in a weird line. I can't get enough of this color story. I find this color story so inspiring. But the thing I love about both palettes is I honestly think both color stories really work well together. The reds on top of the Vida palette obviously go well with the bottom half of the Muerte palette and vice versa. The nice kind of fun teal blues on top go with these greens on the bottom, or you can crisscross, mix and match. For that reason alone, I think this is a really well thought out, beautiful color story and beautiful release. I just like, I can't, they're so beautiful. Like I can't say enough good things about the color selection. They like low-key kind of magnetize together, but I don't think you should store them that way. Performance-wise of these shadows, I do think that both palettes feel extremely different to the Gemini palette. I think they must have somewhere along the way started adding more binder to their palettes. I have one of the original Gemini palettes before Mel ever came into Sephora, and that palette has a lot more kick up and the metallics feel a lot softer and like poofy and pillowy and like they could just bust out of the pans at any second. I know people have had problems with that. People have had problems with breakage, stuff like that. This formula feels sturdier in that everything feels harder pressed, especially the metallics in both palettes definitely don't feel as slick as even the Smoke Sessions palette. It still like has that slickness, but it feels safer in the pan. It feels sturdier and like almost stickier. Maybe a little bit drier. Same with the mattes. The mattes don't feel as kick-uppy and as soft. They feel nice and firmly pressed, and therefore I find them easier to work with than the Gemini palette. These are incredibly pigmented shadows. I think if you go in too heavy-handed, you're going to have too much color to work with and it's going to be trickier. I've had the best luck going in with small amounts first. I've also, because of this formula, because of how pigmented it is and how stiff it is, I've had the best luck going in with slightly denser brushes and kind of placing color where I want it and blending out the edges. Because it is so pigmented, I maintain the most control that way. As far as blendability goes, in both palettes, I'll hold up this palette just to have a little bit of variety. In both palettes, I have a lot of luck with the lighter colors, but it gets trickier the deeper I go. I wouldn't say that the deep mattes are patchy. I think more so they just get stuck. The reason why I'm saying they get stuck versus that they're patchy is I feel like patchy implies that you can't blend them out, your look's just ruined forever. Whereas when I say sticky or that they have a tendency to get stuck, they kind of adhere to certain places on your eye at first, but then you work with it a little bit and you can blend it out. It just takes a little bit of extra time. I would say especially, gonna close this palette, especially in the Muerte palette, I have that problem with these deeper blues. They're colors you want to dip in lightly with and that you kind of want to put specifically where you need them and then blend lightly from there. And then maybe even use a lighter color to blend them out. Works really nicely. The pigment though makes them so worth it to me. They're almost $60 palettes, and I know everyone's question is, well, is it worth it? I do feel like this is a formula that approaches being worth the price. It's very hard for me to say that any $60 eyeshadow is worth the price, but because of how pigmented and beautiful these shadows are, and because while they can be trickier to work with as the deeper shades go, they're still workable. I don't feel like I have to throw the whole eye look out or that I have to toss the palettes out or anything like that. For those reasons, I do think it's worth it. I also will say I unintentionally use a lightening base in that I use the Anastasia Beverly Hills eye primer, but it just so happens to be the same color of my skin. So obviously the colors look extremely vivid on my base. I would recommend using a light base if you want the most out of these palettes, but that being said, I think these are really pigmented shadows that will work for a wide variety of people. Very often when it comes to me reviewing eyeshadows, I'm very hesitant about recommending colorful shadows because there is that asterisk of like, I am the color of a ghost, so take that with a grain of salt. but these are really beautiful performing shadows. If they are worth that $58 price tag, I feel like that's kind of up for you to decide. I think hands down I would pay the $58 again for the Muerte palette for this color story because this is so unique to my collection. For both palettes, they're very inspiring color stories. Like I said, I originally wouldn't have thought to pair either of these color stories together, but now that I've seen them like this, I'm so inspired. I've been playing with so many colorful eyeliners and mascaras and things like that. It's really fun to cross-pollinate these palettes together. They also complement a lot of other melt palettes that are already on the market right now. So like I said, I would absolutely pay this almost $60 again for this palette. The Vida palette is worth it for someone like me who has other melt palettes that works well with this. Like this works really great with Gemini. This works really great with Smoke Sessions. But if this was just a freestanding color story for any brand, I probably wouldn't care as much. So I'm telling you right now, I was influenced to buy this because it is melt and because truthfully, I wanted the two halves of the set. They also come in beautiful packaging. They're nice and weighted. I feel like I got my money's worth. But if you are someone who already has some bright shadows that you like, or you feel like you're not going to gravitate to any of these color stories, or you feel like this is too out of the box for you, or that you only like the packaging, let's say, skip it. But if you know you're going to make great use of these colors and that you find these to be inspiring color stories as well, I say personally I could recommend them. Like truthfully, I don't think you'll have a problem with them. If it makes you nervous though, I would opt towards buying them from Sephora versus the Melt website, because then it might be a little bit easier to return them if you don't find these to be worth your money. Raving about the palettes aside, I also did buy the highlighter. This is such a beautiful highlighter. It has that beautiful skull embossing, all the flowers. I love how this looks visually, and that's about where I'm gonna say all of my favoritism towards it ends. I don't like this highlighter as a highlighter in my collection. I like hate to swatch it, but I have no choice. It's just a pink glitter, and I don't find that it's easy to pick this up with a brush. I have other pink highlighters that work better. The best way that I've had luck using this is to pat this over an existing highlighter with my finger, because unless I wet the brush, I can't pick it up with a brush. And when I do pick it up with a brush, it just disperses weirdly on my cheeks and kind of sparse, and it doesn't really make a cohesive highlighter. I know people have had that same criticism over the Fenty Diamond Bomb. That formula-wise is the closest, but I do think that Diamond Bomb from Fenty is a lot better. This is only okay. And this is a $39 highlighter. I essentially feel like I just bought it for the packaging at this point, because I really expected to like it, because I do like other melt highlighters, but I don't like this one. It's different than that Morningstar highlighter that I really love and speak a lot of good things about. Honestly, skip it. Unless you're a collector of makeup and you just want to put it in your drawer and only look at it, which I don't think you should, I could honestly say skip this. I'm not even wearing it today. Like, that's how much I don't like it. It's really, like, I'm sad that I don't like this highlighter, but I don't. One thing I want to bring up about the eyeshadow palettes before I wrap up this video, because I did want to keep this short and sweet, is there is a little bit of color overlap if you're a melt collector of shadows. Like, for instance, this metallic is definitely present in the Smoke Sessions palette. This red is basically in the Impulsive palette. This blue up here also has a pretty close dupe in their Radioactive palette. And while I don't have the 27 palette, I think some of these shades are dupable within that as well. So if you're not someone who's bought from Melt before, or isn't like making a little melt collection of your own, then that won't be a problem for you. But if you're someone that doesn't like to have a lot of overlap in your collection, just be mindful of that. And then speaking of not having a lot of overlap, I did dig through my eyeshadow palettes to see if I had anything comparable to either story. The number one thing that I kept being told looked like the Vida palette is this Kaleidos Futurism palette, and I will say these are really close. Like, you obviously don't get all of the colors in the Kaleidos palette, but you get basically the same gist. None of the palettes I'm about to compare are exact, like, tit-for-tat dupes, but they definitely share the same vibes. So this Kaleidos palette definitely shares those vibes. This is the Futurism 4 VR Neon palette. similar enough, and I really like the Kaleidos palettes. They're really pigmented and wonderful. I also felt like this Midas High Times palette also kind of shared a similar vibe. Again, not an exact dupe, but actually this one kind of vibes the whole collection because it has that really kind of fun, light aqua green. But the oranges with the greens, same kind of feeling. The Morphe 15T, if you're a Morphe person or just looking for this kind of vibe at a cheaper price point. Again, those oranges mixed with those bright greens, I actually think those colors complement each other very well. I didn't think I would find a lot of vibe dupes for the Muerte palette, but the Colored Raine Lovelies little 6-pan palette, same vibes, I would say. The Juvia's Place Saharan 2, in my opinion, in my collection, was the closest color story that I had. Juvia's Place is incredibly affordable and also very pigmented and easy to use. Another Juvia's Place palette, this is the Magic palette, has a little bit more warm tones towards the top, but you get those reds with very, very similar blues and greens. And then for both melt palettes, I actually thought that this palette, this is the Flair palette from E.l.f. Beaute. I know there's a lot happening right now, stay with me. This to me kind of almost duped both palettes all in one. I don't know if that's a stretch or not, but I see a lot of similarities in these colors for me personally. But yeah, in summary, while these might not be as unique of a color story as I thought, I think it is the most saturated in those color stories and that it really delves deep into those themes. I think this is such a beautiful collection, so well thought out. It is so nice to see a holiday collection that's different and interesting and celebrating different cultures and the color stories inspired by those cultures and celebrating diversity. I just think that's so fun and so cool for the holidays, and it's not just like red and green, silver tinsel crap. I love this collection, minus the highlighter. I should say I love these palettes. I haven't tried the lip products or the eyeliners, but I would recommend these palettes if you're in the market for them or if you have the budget for them, especially above all else, the Muerte palette. So I wanted to throw a quick review up before Black Friday came because I think they're re-releasing again for Black Friday. So I'm going to try to get this up for you this week. It is Monday as I'm filming this. I'm going to try to get this up by Thanksgiving. If you like this video, if you like reviews, and if you like me, please hit like and subscribe. To see what makeup I'm buying in real time and to ask me for reviews of things that you see me buying, you can follow me on my Instagram, which is also Spookles and Fat Hips, or to hear my opinions about makeup in the beauty community in general, follow me on Twitter at SpookyLacey, or all of the above at the Half Cousins Podcast. All of that information, makeup on my face, my P.O. box, whatever, all of that's down below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope it was somewhat helpful. I haven't done a review in a long time and I do want to get back into reviewing things. Let me know what else you need from me. But other than that, that is all I have to say. Thank you guys so much for watching this video and I will see you all in the next one. Bye guys!